We're going to start in just a moment. So this is the panel on public-private partnerships for innovation. We have here experts in public procurement, public-private partnerships, and digitalization. And we're going to discuss how the public and private domains or private sectors can cooperate in order to have public-private partnerships for the development of digital solutions, mainly, but not only. So I would like to present you the panel. We have Sabin Sărmaș, member of the Romanian Parliament and former president of the Agency for Digitalization in Romania. We have Ioan Baciu, who is a senior lawyer with Rubin and Hertzfield in Bucharest, and former member of the European Commission's group of representatives from each member state, consultative group of experts in public procurement. Then we have Oana Vodă, who is a PhD student and lawyer and also expert of the World Bank in public procurement, public-private partnerships. Nadia Saba, who's a new researcher in the Sapiens project, which aims to have 10 international PhDs on issues like public procurement for innovation, sustainable public procurement, and so on. And from abroad is Professor Steven van Garse from Hasselt University. Welcome. So we're gonna start this session with a few words about what is all about public-private partnerships and innovation. The PPPs and innovation are both buzzwords nowadays, and they are usually used by many people, but without exactly knowing what is the real meaning of this. Innovation has been a part of the strategy of the European Union mostly from the year 2000, and there are a lot of tools that can be used by the member states and the European Union in order to advance this agenda of innovation. Such tools include public procurement and state aids. Public procurement generally. State aids are financial help for companies in areas or in fields where the private market are not ensuring all the public benefits that the states want to achieve. And then we have public-private partnerships, which include public procurement and state concessions. And we are mostly in this panel specialized in public procurement and concessions. Well, these are tools that can be used for the strategic objectives of the European Union and of the member states. The question is how to use these public-private partnerships in an effective way in order to foster innovation. We had the experience of the pandemic where the European Union has used the public-private partnerships for innovation in order to develop the vaccines. The fact that the European Union has financed the production and the development of the vaccines is an example of innovative procurement or public-private partnership for innovation. We're going to discuss more in detail what are the public-private partnerships, how they can be used for advancing innovation, and we're going to discuss experiences from Romania, but also from other countries. So I would like to ask if let's see if Steven Van Garse can hear us, and if he can contribute with the presentation to this panel. Steven, can you hear us?
Yes. Do you hear me? Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I had some technical, yes, minor technical issues, but I think they are solved.
We all had, so there's not a problem.
Yeah. Okay, I have as a pitch. I did not make a specific PowerPoint as we do not have a lot of time. I do have a pitch of several minutes, and I want to give you some insights on how I think PPPs can be a useful instrument for innovation, but also what the pitfalls are. So I think first of all, public-private partnerships. It's a notion you can find in a lot of ways and in a lot of documents, but I think it's a very interesting a technique. It's also a really strong tool for doing projects. As with a public-private partnership, you can distribute risks and tasks between public and private partners, and this is also the reason why a lot of national and international organizations are using public-private partnerships, because there are a lot of needs, and there are a lot of challenges, climate, also the IT, digitalization, health, and so then of course by being more creative, by using innovative techniques, PPPs can solve to some extent some of those challenges. And what you'll see is, for example, European Investment Bank, European Commission, also the United Nations are really strong believers of PPP, and they often promote the use of public-private partnerships for many of those challenges. But of course, PPPs are very complicated from a technical, but also from a legal and also sometimes a financial perspective. And that's why there are a lot of guidance, practical guidance available on the market, like the United Nations, like the European Commission have. Also, the World Bank has a very extensive body of knowledge on the PPPs with a lot of recommendations, and that has to do with the complexity of those structures. And one of the ideas that you can find in all the documents is that although PPP is a very strong and a very good instrument, you cannot use it in all circumstances. So you need to assess in advance if there is any added value, if there is value for money in using a structure like a PPP. And then I will come to my point, because of course using PPPs for getting innovation, you have to be very careful with that, because if you use the more traditional PPP structures, like for example the things you can find in the United Kingdom with the private finance initiative, but also what they use in a lot of other countries, which is called the DBFM, the Design, Build, Finance, Maintain contracts. If you use those structures for getting innovation, you really have to be very careful because if it's about R&D, so really cutting edge innovation, I think those kind of PPP structures are not really really suitable. And let me explain why that is. First of all, in a lot of PPPs, the finance component is also included to finance your project, and that means that the private partner will go to a bank and will try to get a loan. And if a project is very novel, the banks will be very reluctant. They will ask a very high risk premium because they will say, okay, what if the project fails? Because it's very innovative, it's very new. And so the finance component in those projects can be very expensive. And we have even had cases where the project was too challenging, and where the financial institutions were not willing to participate to provide a loan because there was just too much risk. So they said, okay, if we give money to the project, we have a chance that they will never repay it because the project fails. So first of all, in many traditional PPP structures, be careful with the finance component because getting finance could be a huge challenge. And then also from a risk management perspective, as to the employer, so the contracting authority, of course, also there from a risk management perspective, also as to evaluation criteria. If you use traditional tender documentation, traditional evaluation criteria, one of the things you can find very often in PPP tenders is, for example, the project plan and also an assessment of the risks. And in highly innovative projects with a high R&D component, managing risk can be very challenging. And so if there you leverage too much, then the traditional evaluation criteria are probably not suited for high risk innovative projects. So if you want to move on, if you want to use PPPs as a structure for R&D innovation, and if you use the traditional PPP structures, like you can find them in the UK, I think you need to be really careful. On the other hand, if the idea is to get really smart solutions from the market, then even those PPP structures can be quite interesting. For example, we had projects where the market was asked to provide optimal solutions for energy consumption, or to find new and more innovative ways for service delivery. So in those cases, it's not really about R&D, but it's about providing smart, intelligent solutions based on existing techniques. And that works quite well, because there, in those cases, you can really manage the risks. So are PPPs then not suitable for R&D and IT kind of projects? Well, I think they are, but you need them to find a good structure. You need to restructure them, and you need to create a more suitable risk transfer. And you can see many examples. For example, in the Horizon 2020 projects, there are also a lot of public-private partnerships, even with cutting-edge technology. But there you basically see that they are using alternative structures, and that when giving tasks and giving risks to the joint ventures, it's quite different in comparison to the traditional PPP structures. There you can see that there are no banks involved, and so no financial institutions, and that the service levels or the outcomes are more about trying to get there. But if you don't get there, you will not be punished in a very hard way. So even in those cases, PPPs can be used, for example, for artificial intelligence solutions, also in the medical sector. But once again, the contracts that you are using are very different. So one PPP is not another PPP. And so solutions, yes, you want solutions, but you do not need to guarantee that you will end up with a solution. And so what you see in those Horizon 2020 projects, and some of them are structured as pre-commercial procurements, is that yeah, you have to do a best effort, and you have to try to innovate and find new solutions. But if you are in the end unable to develop those solutions, then of course they will not force you to try to implement them. So to be brief and to summarize, yes, I think PPPs they can be a very good instrument, but please do acknowledge that they can be very complicated, very difficult to structure. And if you want, if you really want to have cutting edge innovation, R&D kind innovation, do not use the more traditional PPP structures like you can find in the infrastructure sector, for example, because those kind of contracts are not really suitable for that kind of innovative products. That was my pitch.
Thank you very much. We can receive questions on the chat if somebody wants to address questions to the speakers, and we're going to communicate them and answer them maybe later. I will ask now maybe Ioan Baciu to present a few things about PPPs for innovation and the strategy of the European Union in this field.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great. Like I say, it's an impressive array of forces here, and I'm happy that I was invited to share with you some of my ideas on this issue. I should try now to share my screen and see if can you see? Yes. Okay. Do you see it? I can't see the screen, so I don't know if you see it.
Yes, everything good.
Okay, great. So I should first of all start by saying that moments and periods there is a strong connection between public procurement and innovation, in the sense that in the current internal market structure, public procurement could not function well without innovation, could not be developed and deployed without public procurement. The idea is that, however, innovation is not necessarily an old issue on the European agenda. It's cropped substantially just starting with the year 2000. Until then, it was merely promoted in the pursuit of some broader economic or social goals. Other policies and objectives. It all started with 2000, when, following the two council meetings in Nice and Lisbon, a new strategy for growth and jobs was released, and it was that strategy that actually witnessed for the first time and considered that R&D was underfinanced as compared with the main competitors of the Union. Back then it was the community, which were the US and Japan. And under these documents, the European increased R&D expenditure, and most importantly, considered that innovation must become a policy in itself and by itself, independent of other policies of the Union. So based on this strategy in 2003, I came with a document, the innovation policy upgrading the Union's approach in the context of the Lisbon strategy, where it tried to establish the coordinates for the first steps that should have been done for the development of the innovation strategy of the Union. So inevitably, soon the Commission also witnessed that there is a direct link between innovation and public procurement, in the sense that public procurement is a key strategic instrument in the implementation of other policy goals. So innovation could not be left aside. Therefore, just in 2005, the Commission released a review report where it measured the state of play and also anticipated some measures that could be done to improve the strategic instrumentality of public procurement in this specific area. I will come back to the idea that, of course, in order to develop and deploy a strong policy on innovation, it was necessary to have a good financing. And it is not fortuitous that the multi-annual framework program established for 2007 to 2013 included for the first time specific program. In fact, it were 3 specific programs destined to innovation in general. This idea of improving the financing for innovation was recurrent in the other multi-annual financial programs. I will speak further on this. That in 2007, based on its study released in 2006, the Commission came with another good instrument which revealed the power of public procurement and the development of the Union innovation policy, which proposed some interesting elements of good practice. In the same year, actually, the Commission also released a very in this area, which was the pre-commercial, the communication on pre-commercial procurement. Unfortunately, although it was a very powerful tool, it proved to be rather hard to use, and the practice just proves that. Anyway, in 2010, and in the context of the adoption of the Treaty of Lisbon, which came just 3 years back in 2007, and it actually changed fundamentally the structure of the internal market and the paradigm based on which and under which the internal market of the Union was and is functioning. The Commission came with one of the most important documents released so far in the entire existence of the Union, and a document proposed a genuine constitution of the European Union is the European 2020 strategy, which for the first time discussed in a substantial, consistent and coherent way the policies and offer strategic solutions for the possibility to use public procurement, which was explicitly witnessed as one of the most important instruments in this regard. So the use of public procurement for the advancing of the innovation policy of the Union. It was basically, it was actually based on this specific strategy that which opened the door to a strong intervention from the Commission, that this institution came in the next years with something very powerful instruments. Let me anticipate a bit. Okay. In the area of public procurement and how to use it to promote innovation policy goals. This is how there were released some tools dedicated especially to ICT procurement. For example, a guideline for public procurement of ICT goods and services, which came in 2011. Then a study of best practices for ICT procurement. Also, the Commission built some very interesting tools and very useful for the stakeholders and also for public procurers, but for the suppliers as well, with a set of open standards for ICT procurement projects and an e-library of open procurement practices for the procurement of ICT goods. It also developed a European Innovation Scoreboard, which provides with a very interesting comparative analysis of innovation performance in the EU member states. In the specific area of public procurement, the Commission also adopted a number of very important hard law and soft law instruments, among which a green paper on expanding the use of e-procurement in the EU, then a communication on a strategy for e-procurement, and another communication on end-to-end procurement to modernize public administration. In 2014, it came with the package of directives on public procurement as such, and with another directive on e-invoicing in public procurement. So basically, they are following the adoption of the European 2020 strategy. The intervention of the Commission in this area became quite substantial and very, very important. In parallel, however, the Commission continued to develop the innovation policy itself. So this is how in 2019 it came with the 6 priorities for the period 2019 up to 2000, which include a section dedicated to the digital age. It is practically the current EU digital strategy, under which the Commission proposed 2 directions of action. That, as I already efforts were accompanied by a very powerful set of financial tools. For example, the multi-annual financial framework for the previous period, 2014 to 2020, included a dedicated section on competitiveness for growth and jobs, where the Horizon 2020, which was a financing instrument used by the Europe 2020 strategy itself. So the Horizon 2020 was allocated no less than 56.6% of the entire budget allocated to this program itself. A lot of money actually, and the idea is that for innovation itself, the multi-annual financial framework, which is now currently under debate, is for 2020, so for the next framework, 2021 to 2027, offers even more money for innovation and digitalization. This financial framework actually is accompanied by another very important financial tool, is the Next Generation EU, which is specifically destined to help the recovery following the extraordinary crisis that appeared in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the idea is that these two instruments together represent actually the largest stimulus package ever financed in Europe. The financial framework for the next period actually includes the first ever EU program solely dedicated to digital transformation, while the Next Generation EU is built on the idea that at least 20% of the money destined for investment in this area should be injected in the digital transformation of the EU itself. Moreover, this year the Commission came with another very important software instrument, which is the Europe Digital Decade Strategy, so to speak, which introduces basically a EU Digital Compass. It's a plan of actions for the next decade, so up to 2013. And why is this so important? Because it sets a number of very strategic goals. It also defines the pathways, the avenues for the next measures and interventions at the EU level, among which, most importantly, we should mention the digital businesses and digital transformation of public services across EU. Are very ambitious. You could see them on the screen. On the other hand, Digital Compass proposes a joint governance structured with member states, with the idea is Europe joining forces with member states under a unitary policy program, which is about to be implemented in all member states in a unitary way. And also, most importantly, this compass encourages the crafting and implementation of multi-country projects with the financing from the EU instruments, which are about to be released. And the idea is that under this strategy, the Commission encourages projects like connected data processing infrastructure or a platform destined to connect public administration. These are essential for the future transformation of public procurement as a policy instrument, and especially in the context of the implementation of the Europe innovation and the digitalization policy. Sorry, I should go to my next slide. What's the idea here? The idea is that basically public procurement lays at the interface between politics, policies, and case law. And if we are to recall Article 7 from the Treaty for the Functioning of the European Union, the Union is compelled to ensure consistency between its policies and activities, taking all of its objectives into consideration. So, we are now in the phase of I don't know, provocative endeavor, in the sense that innovation should be integrated into the other policies, just as the other policies developed at the European level should be integrated into the innovation policy. And it's a tricky and very, it is actually a tricky process. And why is this important in the public procurement for innovation context? Because innovation in itself defines, this area is actually one of the few areas where the law regulates what public procurers should procure. So in reality, when discussing about innovation in public procurement, we should not only refer to what public buyers are procuring, I mean, innovative solutions and so on, but it's also about how they procure usual supplies or services or works. It's about how the procurement process itself is to be done. And one of the main elements on the European agenda nowadays is the full digitalization of the procurement process, which starts stage, which should be done via dedicated e-procurement portals. Then the release of e-notices, public buyers and suppliers itself, circulation of ESPDs, and their verification should be done also on e-procurement platforms. Contract monitoring, which is a very important stage in the process, should also be accessible via e-portals, and e-invoicing is to be done on dedicated portals. So the entire procurement process is to be digitalized, where in my last slides, I insist on the risks that may come with this digitalization. And in general, we could discuss on discrimination at many levels, in the crafting of technical specifications itself, but also in the e-tendering process as such, in the qualification process, or in the circulation of e-invoices and the verification process. I guess I should stop here. There are other panelists who should speak, so I thank you very much. Let me just stop. Okay, this is it.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So these are the challenges facing public procurement in this new context of the strategies of the European Union. If you have questions for our speakers, please send them by chat, and we're gonna address them. If not, we're gonna leave at the end some time for discussion. I will invite now Oana Voda, who's both a lawyer practicing in public-private partnerships, public procurement concessions, and all the like, but also a researcher in this area, and also an expert of the World Bank, assisting public authorities in buying smart and buying sustainable in these very troubled times. So we're going to hear about her experience and expertise on public-private partnerships for innovation.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me well. I'm very happy to be here and to see familiar faces. Professor Van Harse had a different family name when we met. I got married in the meantime. Johan, congrats on your recent PhD award. And Nadia, it's nice to meet you. Hopefully we can meet in person. Very interesting presentations by my 4 speakers. I was wondering what can I tell you to be at least equally interesting. I will try to be a little bit more brief and to somehow make a connection with what Professor Van Harse mentioned and what Iwan Baciu mentioned. And I will try to focus a little bit on the new STAR procedure under the directives, namely the innovation partnership. But let's see how it goes, because I want to give enough time to Nadia to also present her thoughts and then to maybe take some questions. So I prepared the presentation. It's rather long, but my main goal is to just highlight some of the aspects that are challenging. I don't think that we have a right or wrong answer in public procurement nowadays. It's challenging. It's a challenging field, always under construction. I'm wondering when we will have a new proposal for new directives, because it happens every decade. So let's see what happens, and I will also try to maybe present some of my thoughts, part of the research I'm conducting under the supervision of Professor Dragos, and some of my practical experience working with innovation procurement instruments. So I'm going to try to share my presentation, and then please let me know if that works out. I hope you can see it now. Professor Dragos, if you can confirm verbally.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So the presentation I made, as I mentioned, is focusing mostly on innovation partnerships, but within the general framework of innovation procurement. I would like to just quickly touch on innovation procurement in general, and then give some insights on innovation partnership, and try to make a comparison with other innovation procurement instruments. So if we discuss about innovation procurement as a general concept, as a general framework, I think it developed over time with the needs that public procurers, contracting authorities, contracting entities faced in order to provide the services to taxpayers, to us, to the citizens, who are the ultimate beneficiaries of these services. So it gets more complicated and more complex every day for the public procurers to do their job. And sometimes when trying to provide these services or works or products to taxpayers, they find themselves in situations where there are no solutions available on the market. When I talk about public procurers, it's not only the municipalities, right? So we talk also about hospitals and public procurers in general that need to help us have a good life, right? So when public procurers need to provide goods or services or even works that are not available on the market, or for which no solutions are available to the market, innovation procurement can help, because it enables them to get involved in the production, for instance, for products in the production cycle, to help the market develop technologically innovative solutions to meet the needs. Another rationale of innovation procurement is to ensure an increased competitive environment for the private sector. So it goes both ways, and this is why we need to ensure a collaborative approach between the private sector and the public sector to ensure the right combination of skills and indeed to share the costs and risks correlated with innovation procurement. And I remember what Professor Van Harse was mentioning, that PPPs are highly risky setups, and a good allocation of risks between the private sector and the public sector is maybe key to success of such of complex setups. Now, indeed, in the innovation framework, in innovation procurement, I think the risks are higher when compared to traditional PPPs in the construction sector, for instance. And you know, I remember having read a very interesting book discussing about why the state or the public sector is sometimes better positioned than any other actor in the overall arena to take the risks when comparing to trying to get a loan from a bank, for instance, but we can discuss about it later. Now, I also thought about the requirements to have a successful uptake of innovation procurement, and evidently we need to have an innovation-friendly ecosystem to be able to talk about implementing innovation procurement and transform it from a simple concept that we very nicely, all of us talk about at a very theoretical level, but to transform it into a practical way of implementing the project. And an innovation-friendly ecosystem requires support from a political perspective, and this is what the European Union, the European Commission, and all the institutions in Brussels are working on. And my speaker, Ioan Baciu, presented very nicely the entire policy-related framework in place at the EU level and the entire history from early 2000 until present. But in addition to policy instruments, we need to have also the legal framework to help it to help with the implementation of policies into real life instruments. So it's both political and legislative reforms that are required to promote uptake of innovation in strategic areas. I'm not gonna go more into the history of innovation procurement because Ioan already touched on that, and I don't want to just waste the time to touch on that again. I think what is important with the last version of the public procurement directives, because we can't say the new directives anymore because they are dated 2014, is the fact that for the first time we have the concept of innovation defined in a legal instrument of the directives. This is the definition: research and innovation, including eco-innovation and social innovation. So the directive presents also the setup against which it establishes the definition for innovation, but basically in recital 47 of the directive provides a very clear definition of the rationale for innovation procurement: purchasing R&D services and innovative products, works and services that play a key role in improving the efficiency and quality of public services while addressing major societal challenges. So for the first time we have a definition of innovation. It is related to the 2020 strategy of the European Commission. So that's a little bit maybe debatable, because now we have to look forward to the maybe 2030 strategy, but it shouldn't be seen as a limitation. I was mentioning in the beginning of my speech that I would like to discuss a little bit about various instruments that could be used to implement innovative procurement procedures. So there are various instruments that need to be placed in specific context. So we can talk about the procurement of R&D services, and this is the as Professor Van Harse already mentioned, we talk about pre-commercial procurement that focuses exclusively on the procurement of R&D services. Then we can talk about procurement of innovative solutions once the R&D cycle is completed and we have a prototype for a product or a service that was tested in real life situation, then it can be deployed largely on the market. And for this, we have the procurement of innovative solutions. We can have a combination of a PCP and PPI, and we can have the innovation partnership, which was introduced by the 2014 directives. Now, I can share with you that I was lucky enough to be part of some projects at European level, PCP projects or pre-commercial procurement projects, focusing exclusively on R&D services that were successful. We have the PCP communication from the European Commission dated back in 2007 and the working staff document that explains how you can implement PCPs in practice. For the procurement of innovative solutions, this is basically covered by the European directives, and you can implement it by using the negotiated procedure or competitive procedure with negotiation. But the innovation partnership is something new. And when I was working with public authorities in across member states in Europe, on implementing PCPs followed by PPIs, it was not only one time that I heard complaints, okay, we understand the benefits of having a PCP followed by a PPI, but for us as public procurers, it's so difficult to conduct two different procedures. Why can't we just combine it in one single procedure? So to have the R&D phase and the commercial deployment of the identified solution included in one and the same procedure to save some time. And you know, when innovation partnership was officially launched as part of the new 2014 directives, a lot of procurers said, finally, we have an instrument to work with. At least in theory, they said so, because in practice, I think things are a little bit more difficult to be implemented. There are projects on, there are innovation partnerships that have been started, mostly in Western Europe. We don't really see that many in Central and Eastern Europe. It may have something to do with the capacity of the public procurers to implement such a project, to find a way to build up the preparatory phases, the market consultation, the market research, the market analysis, to get all the information and then put it in the contracting strategy. We will see. But in Western countries, I know that innovation partnerships are already started to being implemented, and maybe we can discuss more about this in the open discussion section. I will try to move a little bit towards, you know, the part of the presentation focusing on the innovation partnership, and I will try to conclude in a few minutes. So what is the innovation partnership? It entails a long-term partnership between a contracting authority, one or more contracting authorities, and one or several economic operators. It entails both the research and development phase and the deployment, large deployment of final products that should be delivered at the initially agreed performance and cost levels. The procurement directives mention when innovation partnership should be used. So it shouldn't be used for obviously off-the-shelf procurements or procurements, the complexity of which does not justify the use of innovation partnership. So based on the provision of the procurement directives, the innovation partnership should be used when a public procurer faces a need for an innovative product, service, or work that cannot be met by the criteria which cannot be made by the existing product, services, or works. And also it needs to be ensured that there is enough market pull to avoid the foreclosure of market and the distortion of competition. The directives move forward and they say how the innovation partnership should be structured as a competitive procedure with negotiation, with the phases that such a procedure entails. The number of bidders can be reduced as you go from one phase to the other, because it entails, the innovation partnership entails a successive phases that should follow the sequence of steps in the research and innovation process. However, the directive is silent as to what is the research and innovation process that it refers to. Is it the R&D process provided under the PCP communication in 2007? Should we look into the technology readiness level setup, which go from 1 to 10? Is it left to the decision of the public procurers to decide which are the steps in the research and innovation process? So it's probably the directive and European legislator wanted to leave a lot of flexibility to the public procurers, to the contracting authorities in terms of creating this procedure. But then on the other hand, given the complexity thereof and the novelty thereof, questions may be raised into the opportunity to have such a flexible setup. Then the directive says that some intermediate targets shall be set to gradually reduce the number of economic operators. Now, if you use the sequence of R&D steps in the PCP setup, in the pre-commercial procurement setup, it's rather easy to set the targets, because, okay, the first target should be we have a nice design concept. The second target is we need to develop a prototype, and then the third target is we need to have that prototype working in real life conditions. So it needs to be seen how these intermediate targets shall be set and against which R&D and I process. Then the structure of the innovation partnership should reflect the degree of innovativeness. Again, it's pretty flexible as it is now, the regulation, so we need to see how to implement it in practice. And then the fourth procedural rule included in the directive: the estimated value of supply, services, or works should not be disproportionate in relation to the investment. But there's no proportionality test included or recommended to be able to make this estimation. I try to picture a little bit how the innovation partnership may look in reality if we take the three phases from the pre-commercial procurement. I'm not sure if the presentations will be made available to everybody that attends the event, but if so, you will be able to look at it. And then I was thinking about how to make the innovation partnership work in practice, because there are some challenges. So maybe I will focus a little bit on the challenges and then provide an idea on how for a potential approach. Now, given the fact that you combine the R&D stage and the large deployment of the products or services created, there might be a risk of state aid involved. And there is a lot of very nice pieces written by colleagues in the area on this matter. If the R&D, for instance, could be provided by small and medium enterprises, it's very possible that these small and medium enterprises could not support a large deployment of the product or the services that is developed following the R&D. So then how do you ensure as a public procurer that you find a balance between these two? How do you ensure that if you allow a large company to do both the R&D phase and the large deployment, you don't fall under the state aid rules? Then again, on the IPR arrangements, the directive currently says that the IPR arrangements and IPR rights should be very clearly stated in the tender procedure. Again, a lot of discussion can be derived from here, whether we discuss about exclusive development or non-exclusive development. So again, I think that the current legal provision is rather scarce in this regard, and it's very difficult for the contracting authorities to come up with an IPR strategy upfront. Again, the proportionality aspect that I mentioned before is another issue for discussion. As a potential approach for a legally compliant innovation partnership, I came up with a few ideas to ensure an open, transparent competition based on the principles mentioned in the Treaty for the Functioning of the European Union, and also the public procurement principles, to find a way to provide an IPR strategy. And maybe this is something to be discussed in a market consultation that should come and be conducted before the initiation of an innovation partnership. Maybe play a little bit with the contract and include possibilities of the contracting authorities to terminate the partnership completely in case the solutions don't meet the established targets, as a way to mitigate the risk. Because if you commit to just go all the way as a contracting authority, you might end up spending money, public money, for nothing in the end, because it's very possible, given the complexity of the innovation entailed by this procedure, to not reach to the stage where we have a final product or service that meets the initially set up targets. As regards the deployment, it's possible to limit the purchase of the developed product to a first batch. So not to have a long-term partnership, or define what the long-term partnership means. Maybe we use a threshold of 5 years that's used in the concession sector or not, but it's something to be investigated. And as regards state aid, better safe than sorry. Sometimes it's recommendable to just notify the innovation partnership to the Commission and check compliance with state aid. That's about it from my perspective. I think I don't know how much time is left for Nadia, but I just wanted to bring up some issues for discussion. It's very difficult to come up with a solution, but just to open up the floor to discuss these aspects and to see if, from your experience, you see things differently, or you already have a solution to the identified hurdles. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So next we have, let's see whether, Sabin Sarmash has some problems with the connection. He's in an area with low connection, so we're gonna wait to see if he can connect. Okay, in the meantime, Nadia Sava, which is our new recruit in the business of PPPs for innovation, in the project Sapiens, which is a project financed by the European Union through the Marie Curie network, that tries to bring together expertise on sustainable public procurement from 12 universities around Europe. And we're going to have many international PhD students that will travel and will get classes and training from all these universities and from companies in the sector. I should mention that the Cluj IT cluster, the main organizer of this conference, is one of the secondment agencies or organizations that will host one of or even two of the international PhD students that will activate in Romania. And in other countries, so we thank them for involvement. Also, we have from Romania the Agency for Centralized Procurement that will host some PhD students. So we're trying to bring together all the forces for research in sustainable public procurement, including innovative procurement. So, Nadia, a few words about your research project. Please unmute first, and then you have down on the screen. You should have the unmute button. We cannot hear you. No, we cannot hear you. Below the screen, you should have the microphone and the unmute button. If you don't have it, just maybe give a refresh or something. Okay, we're waiting for Nadia to reconnect. In the meantime, if you have questions for the panelists, please address them in the chat. We have already some notes from Ioan Baciu, and I also put there the book to which one was referring to have it on the chat for everybody to maybe look at it. It's a very interesting book about the role of the state in innovation generally, deconstructing some myths that only the private companies are innovative. Well, a lot of these innovations were financed with public money in the beginning, at least, or they were developed with public money. So we should acknowledge the role of the state in this development, and no later than this year or last year, when the development of the vaccines have started. This is also a method that was financed by the European Union and by other states, of course, the United States. So, Nadia?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm sorry for this technical difficulty. Thank you very much, Professor Dragos. Thank you to all the members of the panel for the very interesting subjects that were discussed. I'm very happy to be among you today. And I will share my screen. Let me know if it's okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So during my presentation, I will talk to you about Industry 4.0 for sustainable public procurement, which is my PhD research topic that I will be doing in the Sapiens project, and that will be coordinated by Professor Dragos. My goal is to discover how we can use emergent technologies in order to make public procurement more sustainable, and how to implement the solutions in the European policy and legislation. To begin with, I would like to talk to you about two transitions, two forces that are reconfiguring society today and that are completely changing the way we live. On one hand, the first transition is made by emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, big data, or clouds, to name just some of them. These technologies reformed multiple domains. They created new products, new services, and new business models. They offer tremendous opportunities to improve our standard of living. Moreover, they changed the production process. We now talk about an industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, which is a revolution because it merges digital technology and physical processes to create cyber-physical systems. And it's not just a simple continuation of the digitalization, but a true change in the organization of the supply chain, which becomes more dynamic, more responsive, and more transparent. Industry 4.0 has the potential to innovate public procurement in all its cycles, with important positive effects on efficiency, automatization, flexibility, transparency, quality, and cost. Moving to the second transition, the second change in our society made by the ecological crisis that we are going through. In response to this urgency, the concept of sustainable development was created. What is sustainability? As we know, in one simple phrase, it is a development that meets our needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own. And it also relies on three main pillars: economic, environmental, and social. Now, it may seem like Industry 4.0 and sustainability are two separate issues, that there is no interaction between the two of them. However, these two movements converge. Industry 4.0, via its technological innovation, offers unprecedented potential to achieve sustainable solutions. In this context, what is the role of public administrations? Every year, more than 250,000 public administrations, public authorities in the European Union, spend around 14% of the GDP, so around 2 trillion euros per year, to purchase services, works, and supplies. This way, we see that a possible and that the contribution of public administration for sustainability is of great importance. My research will put all of these pieces together in order to answer the following question: how we can make public procurement more sustainable by the use of emergent technologies. In general terms, we can talk about environmental and social advantages. Environmental because this could increase production, minimize the use of resources, and minimize the ecological impact. And social because it could create work opportunities, improve working standards, and increase the integrity of the supply chain. Now, I would like to talk to you about two technologies in particular, which I will study during my PhD, namely artificial intelligence and smart contracts, and their possible uses in sustainable public procurement. Firstly, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is already used in many aspects of law today, such as problem solving, automated decisions, or compliance checks. This technology could bring structural transformation to public procurement and ensure a more responsible process. It could anticipate the needs of public administrations, integrate the phases pre and post procedure, as well as the conduct of the procedures themselves, and obtain a more efficient process at its best value. For example, we could use these technologies to track the supply chain of the seller and verify its integrity. So, meaning we could check if he respects human rights or ecological legislation, and we could also make sustainability compliance checks, which is similar to what I described before. And moving forward to smart contracts. Smart contracts rely on the technology of blockchain, which is a distributed network that creates immutable contracts that cannot be corrupted. So their use could improve public procurement in aspects of dynamicity, security, and transparency that could eliminate errors and corruption. And to give a few examples, this could be used in a simplified procedure to automatically identify commercial partners, match them with the public authority, and generate documents. And also, this was used previously to calculate the financial health of a potential partner. So, similarly, we could use it to determine a sustainability score of the seller. And this could have an impact on its eligibility. So, for example, if he has a very low sustainability score, he could not be eligible for the procedure. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope my presentation gave you some ideas on the possible uses of emerging technologies for sustainable public procurement.
Thank you, Nadia. Well, we went through the presentations with different perceptions of the PPPs as an instrument for innovation. I would like to ask the panelists maybe to share a few thoughts on two very important issues that that are in my mind relevant for the discussion of PPPs for innovation in a digitalized world. First, there were the issues that Yunus Bacu raised on discrimination. Is this automatization of decision-making in public procurement in PPPs leading to maybe more discrimination than today? And first, what do you think about the fitness of these tools for innovation nowadays, after a pandemic where every country in the European Union will be preoccupied with spending the money from the resilience package. And we all know that we have 5 years to spend the money from that resilience package that it's going to be adopted by the European Union, and it's discussed right now, the European Union level. So are these considerations on innovation, do we have the time actually to spend the time for instance, procurement for innovation, or procurement of solutions, and to test them, and to have several stages of public procurement? Do we have that time, or we're going to rush through this period and maybe come back later to these considerations of innovations? Because that's the main issue in Romania right now. I was discussing with the members of the government, with the members of the parliament. Everybody is so afraid that the system of public procurement, of public-private partnerships, usually is going to be a roadblock for the spending of the money that are coming from the European Union. And the rules in this resilience package are very different from the rules in general in spending European money, because it's not on the project. There's not money for the projects, are money for reforms. So if something goes wrong in the system, if you want to reform a system, and digitalization is one objective of this resilience package, if something it's a glitch in the system of reform, everything falls down. Is the public procurement system, the PPPs, are they ready to take this challenge? And of course, I will ask Stephen, what's the perception from Belgium and from Western democracies? But I will ask also my colleagues from Romania to comment on the fact that Romania will going to have to implement these reforms with the same public administration, with the same unreformed public administration that we are all complaining about. So maybe now would have been time for a large reform of the public administration, but we need to use what we have. Do we have enough tools? Do we have enough instruments to tackle this problem? Thank you, Stephen. First.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really an interesting question, and it's interesting because we had the same debate in Belgium. Which instruments should we use, and can we use, for example, more advanced PPP structures? And I think there the idea of the government was that we need to be very careful because, as you said, there is a very strict term for the subsidies for the resilient package we receive, and we need to have results. And if we don't have the results, we will lose a lot of money. And that concern was also very high on the Belgian agenda, and it is for that reason that they are, of course, they are looking for innovation and transformative projects, but I don't think they will be too creative in the procedures they will be using. So I don't expect to see much money spent on PPP projects or very innovative public procurement procedures, because as I explained, most of them are very complicated and also quite a high risk. Yeah? And if you mess up during the time frame you have, you will lose the money, and we just cannot take that risk. So my expectation, and that is what is happening in Belgium, is that they will choose to try to get low fruit and more traditional forms of procurement just to avoid the risk. So that's one element. Having said that, I do think that the transformation will lead to, in the longer term, to more innovative procedures, and also probably more PCPs, because it's true, we all receive a lot of money because of this resilient package. But at the same time, if you look at the money they have under the new Horizon 2020 project, there you see that there is 100 million euro available, which is also a lot of money. And there you have more time, there you have the more traditional rules. So I do think we need to look at what is the source of money, and then try to find the best solution. And so I think that the new procedures, and the innovation partnerships and other more innovative procedures, they will be used, but probably less for spending the money under the resilient package. As to your first question on the discrimination, I think you're right. What you see in some cases where current practices are transformed to fully integrated e-procurements, that this could potentially create a hindrance for foreign companies. We had several problems with credentials to log in, but I think and there I think COVID-19 helped. I think we are really accelerating on implementing IT and new technology. So my expectation is also with the initiatives the EU is taking, that the chances on discrimination will become smaller and smaller. So I'm not very pessimistic on that specific aspect, but of course we need to be aware of the fact that the technology need to be open and transparent, which is, by the way, also a requirement under the directives. And we had some litigation in the past where our Council of State clearly said that it is the responsibility of the contracting authority to use an open platform that is not discriminating. And if by any means the result of a tender is that some parties are discriminated because they did not have access to the platform because of IT issues and stuff like that, then it is the responsibility of the contracting authority. So I think there we need to be aware of this responsibility, and I think contracting authorities need to be careful how they implement the new technologies, and then also need to take care of the capacity and the professional capacity to implement those new techniques. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Wana, if you want to.
Sure. It's interesting with the funds available from the resilience plan. I think everybody is looking in Romania on how to use it. But I think that there are more problems that we need to look at. When you compare the public procurement system in Romania with more mature public procurement systems, it's not only the deadline that's quite short, 5 years, even for classic procurements. When we talk about building a short sector of a highway, not the entire highway, just a sector. Professionalization of public procurement officers in Romania is still at the starting stage, so to say. Working with contracting authorities in some of the projects financed by European, by international financing institutions, it became clear that a professionalization program needs to be put in place, and I think this is something that they're working on now. So it's not only the time frame that's quite small, it's also the lack of capacity on the side of the public procurers to be able to use this money for complex procurements. And I'm not even gonna open the Pandora box with innovation procurements, because that's also something quite new in Romania. So probably we will see this money used for very classic procurements, and maybe by I don't know, institution at a central level that maybe benefit from teams of professionals with governmental support, and not necessarily implemented. We will not see them used for projects implemented by smaller authorities. Again, I fully agree with Professor Van Harse as regards the innovation procurements. There are other sources of financing that can be used. Authorities in Romania can join forces with authorities in other member states in the form of a consortia, and to be able to exchange practices and lessons learned and knowledge. So that's a different story. To sum up, I believe that the funds available under the resilience plan will not go to innovative projects, because it's too risky. And one more thing I wanted to add, it's also the culture in the country. I mean, in Romania, we have hundreds of complaints that are being filed, sometimes with good reasons, but sometimes just to attack a competitor and to make sure he doesn't get the contract, or just to cancel the procedure because you had a bad experience with that public procurer in a previous project. So it's not always an objective reason to file these complaints, and it is a consideration that we need to think about, the culture of the market in Romania. So having also this in mind, I think it's rather it's challenging to see how this money will be spent. Lately, they are talking about a new amendment of public procurement legislation in Romania to further simplify it. So we will see, because this will also directly impact how they will use the money from these funds. Regarding your first question, Dacian, this is a very interesting topic. we always talk about our professional judgment when we look at tender documentation. I don't know where is the line up to which we can use robots or AI to look into information provided by bidders, and where we need to double the effort by using us, the people, because at this point, I think that the technology is very advanced, but is it that advanced to see if you need to address a clarification question to the bidder or not? Because even the information that goes into ESPD may be subject to clarification. So I think this is the future, obviously, but it's still the future. It's not now. I think we're going towards that. I think blockchain technology is people are working to use this blockchain technology to verify received bids. But we have to see how this will be done, and how we make sure that public procurement will not be changed, and the final scope of the legislation and the principles in the treaty will be safeguarded also when using AI. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very short thoughts, Yunus. We started from your question or your issue that you presented on discrimination in innovative procurement. So maybe you have also short comments so that we have time for Nadia to comment.
Yes, indeed. I have a lot of short comments, so to speak, so I can fill up a lot of time. Both Professor Fangers and Juana basically said it all. So I would maybe just insist on the idea that in general, innovative solutions come with or could generate a lot of discrimination and a lot of inequality between, and I would just recall what I said in the beginning of my presentation, that in the European Union context, in terms of policies, all measures and all actions should be taken or adopted in such a way so to ensure a certain level of consistency between all the policies adopted or developed at that level. So it is very important, for example, to avoid solutions which could breach objectives like set on another policy levels. For example, there are a lot of studies showing that the way that you build artificial intelligence, the algorithm that you use, high risk of, for example, it must be that a system is created so to facilitate an easier intervention from men rather than women. And this is gender equality is high on the European agenda, and it's very important to ensure that the solutions that you procure, for example, as a public buyer, are not biased. Such kind of algorithms. So this is a very delicate issue. On another level, the mere idea of digitalization, the entire procurement process, is another source of discrimination. I mean, it very much depends on the way that you describe, you set your technical specification. You intentionally or not, specific categories of suppliers. E-invoicing is another. I know that the European Commission takes a lot of effort and invests a lot of effort in I don't know, tackling these issues. For example, and just I'm sure many of you know, all of you know that since we are all participating in online events, first it was Zoom that we all used, and now that we are all used to familiar with the Zoom, no one is using Zoom anymore. I had some previous meetings where I had to connect via Blue Jeans. Later today, I should participate in another meeting which is using another online platform like Big Marker. We have the Teams, this one that we are using now, the Hopin. So transposing this idea into the public procurement sector, of course, the suppliers need to fastly adapt to the solutions used by public buyers, and this is not at all an easy task. So this is why we need a uniform approach, uniform solutions shared uniformly by as many buyers as possible. Common online platforms on which e-invoices to be uploaded, and the communication itself to take place. So again, it's not an easy task, and we'll see what.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nadia. A few thoughts?
Yes, thank you very much. So regarding the question of the use of funds in the post-COVID world, I think I agree. I couldn't agree more with what has been said, and I cannot add other thoughts, but I can maybe nuance them a little bit. And I think, yeah, it's very important to think about the different states in the European Union and about the comparative law in this context, and think about the needs of each state, the culture of the market, as it has been said, and also previous experiences. So taking all of this into consideration, and the hierarchy of all these needs, maybe there is, in some countries there are infrastructural needs. I think in these areas the funds will be used for classic public procurement and for classic needs, to say so. For example, transport. And regarding the second question, the use of smart technologies. Yeah, I think this is the future, but we need to be one step forward and already be in the future, and know how to anticipate the use, and see possible advantages and disadvantages as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, just adding to that, we're experiencing nowadays some interventions from the states for the in a way in order to stop the advancement of some developments of blockchain. We're seeing states that are pursuing an action to forbid the use of crypto currencies for some transactions. So in a way similar with the development of AI and with the development of genetic testing and genetic development, so on, maybe we need the state to step in, to intervene, and to say, well, that's enough. Maybe we shouldn't use AI for public procurement unless it's something that we can ensure that it's also attentive to human rights, to basic principles of the common market, and so on. So all these ideas that we shared here converge to this conclusion that the role of the legislation will be of utmost importance in the future, in maybe dealing with what the market is throwing to the public governments, and what could be taken in or not. And this conference in itself, it's a way of putting together in the same room, well, virtual room this time, public administrations and the market, the IT sector, the developers in the region and in Europe and outside Europe, to talk about ways of cooperation, ways of public-private partnerships. There are all these tools are used whether or not we are aware of their importance, and they are the tools that we need to make it happen when we're talking about this cooperation between the industry and the government. So hopefully this conference will be a necessary step for the advancement of these talks. And we in the panelists in the public procurement and public-private partnerships field of research and practice, we encourage this dialogue between governments and the industry, and we are rooting for constructive dialogue between those two in the period that will come. This is the only way in which we can still identify some innovating projects that can be financed through the resilience plan or through other funds that are coming from the European Union, and still keep the flow going in what regards the innovation in public sector. Thank you all for participating and for your presentations and thoughts. And hopefully next year we're going to see each other again at this conference in person and in more friendly venues than online like we are now. Thank you.
Innovation Days is part of the Future Skills lifelong learning program. The project is co-financed from the European Social Fund through the Human Capital Operational Program 2014-2020.